They thought it was just dinner. It turned out to be a declaration of war in lace and porcelain. Veronica de la Cruz had spent 3 days preparing the perfect evening. Silver cutlery polished to a paranoid shine, the forbidden china from her grandmother's will, which, technically, still belonged to Lucretia, and candles tall enough to qualify as a fire hazard. It was her reconciliation feast, as she dramatically whispered to herself while spraying perfume between the plates. This dinner, she proclaimed to no one and everyone, will bring harmony back to this cursed family. They came, of course, because when Veronica says it's important, it usually means someone's getting written out of the inheritance. Henry Montgomery sat at the head of the table like a frozen statue in a courtroom, knife perfectly aligned with his cloth napkin. Brandon wore a shirt, for once, but it was unbuttoned enough to expose at least 3 abdominal reasons why his online fitness program was thriving. Chloe arrived 10 minutes late, wearing what could only be described as a gothic wedding gown stolen from the dream of a Victorian vampire. "I'm deconstructing norms," she said flatly, sliding into her seat like a ghost that resents the living. Jessica, the housekeeper turned unofficial narrator, placed a roast in the center of the table and whispered to Señor Whiskers, "Let the show begin, Carino." And oh, did it. Brandon stood up with the grace of a protein shake commercial and announced, "I'm gonna propose to Santiago, but live on TikTok, from the rooftop, with fireworks, and probably shirtless. 4 views. Chloe rolled her eyes so hard the chandelier flickered. "Cute," she muttered. "Very Roman Empire of you." Then Lucretia, in her usual silk and secrets, raised an eyebrow and casually dropped her grenade. "Someone's been stealing my valerian again. The one with the skull label." Everyone froze, except the cat, who started twitching its tail like it understood too much. Veronica laughed too loudly. "Mama, really? Can't we have one dinner without your conspiracies?" But the real bomb dropped when Chloe, carving into her vegan loaf like a murderer with morals, murmured, "Why marry at all? I mean, eventually someone cheats. Like Mom did to Dad." Silence. Even the candles flickered nervously. All eyes turned to Henry. The lawyer. The mystery. The man whose expressions were rarer than solar eclipses. He calmly sliced his roast and said, without looking up, "Sometimes silence is the most powerful response." It echoed louder than any shout. Veronica stood abruptly. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice cracking under 50 layers of theatrical restraint. She vanished up the stairs, heels clicking like gilt on marble. Chloe reached for her phone. "Guess it's time I launch my docu-series, De La Cruz Destruction. Already got the TikTok handle." Meanwhile, Señor Whiskers strolled out, tail high, and disappeared into Henry's study. A minute later, a faint click was heard. The safe had been sniffed. In this family, secrets aren't buried. They're just dressed in designer and seated at the table. The morning after the dinner with a scandal felt like the air itself had been laced with suspicion. The chandelier still trembled, as if it had PTSD. Veronica hadn't come down from her boudoir, and the scent of her vintage rose perfume haunted the staircase like a rejected lover. Brandon, still shirtless, naturally, stood in front of the mirror rehearsing his proposal lines. "Do you believe in forever? No to Twilight. Will you be the Santiago to my biceps? Actually kind of fire." He flexed. Downstairs, Jessica stirred coffee with the precision of someone who had watched families disintegrate over espresso. "Still no sign of your mother?" she asked Chloe, who sat at the counter sketching a burning heart pierced by a gavel. "She's probably planning her own funeral again," Chloe said flatly. "Last time it included a gospel choir and doves that turned out to be pigeons. One had rabies." Lucretia strolled in, silk robe cinched like a secret weapon. She eyed Chloe's drawing. Symbolism. Cute. Just don't forget to draw the inheritance clause on the back. The kitchen TV was on. And that's when it happened. A live stream popped up. At FitBrand Official. The proposal you've all been waiting for, ring fire. Brandon, on the roof, shirtless as promised, with a heart-shaped ring box and a drone circling above. Wait, is he seriously doing it? Chloe blinked. Of course, Jessica smirked. Nothing says commitment like a public stunt and no backup plan. Lucretia sipped her tea. I give it 3 weeks. 5 if they use separate bathrooms. Just as Brandon dropped to one knee in front of Santiago, who looked both stunned and slightly suspicious, the feed glitched. A blur. A shadow behind them. And then? Static. Oh no, Chloe whispered. That was Señor Whiskers. He hates drones. Meanwhile, in the study, Henry sat alone, staring at an old family photo. He turned to his notebook and wrote one word. Oliver. Behind him, the safe clicked again. Señor Whiskers sat atop it, purring. Something shivered between his teeth. A USB stick. Blood red. The kind of thing that doesn't store spreadsheets. The kind of thing that ends marriages. Or lives. To be continued. Some families pass down heirlooms. This one passes down emotional weapons. Veronica finally emerged the next evening. Draped in black silk, with pearls that clung to her neck like accusations, she floated into the living room like a ghost who refused to be ignored. Her eyeliner was slightly smudged, intentionally, of course. A visual metaphor for a woman on the edge. I've decided to forgive everyone, she declared, staring into the void between the chandelier and Chloe, even those who stabbed me metaphorically, and possibly literally. Brandon, fresh off his rooftop stunt and licking his ego wounds, Santiago had said, I need time, Carino, and walked off screen, was sprawled on the couch like a tragic Roman statue. I think the algorithm punished me, he moaned. Engagement is down. Jessica didn't look up from folding linens. So is your dignity. From the corner, Lucretia gave a dry cough that somehow felt like a gunshot. Where's Henry? Veronica asked, dramatically adjusting a pearl earring that hadn't been touched. In his study, Jessica replied, with the safe, and the cat, and several glasses of brandy. Veronica's eyes narrowed. Cut to Henry, seated at his massive oak desk, staring at the now empty safe. The USB was gone, but he had printed screenshots. The photo on his desk, a teenage boy in a hoodie. Same eyes, same nose. The resemblance was cruel in its honesty. Oliver. A knock at the door. Soft, hesitant. Come in, Henry said without turning. It was Chloe. She didn't sit. Just stood there, like a warning in combat boots. I know, she said simply. Henry raised an eyebrow. Know what? That you're hiding a son. Another one, she said. I found the burner phone. In your shaving kit. Next to the receipt for a birthday cake with the name Oliver. Henry closed the file. Does your mother know? Chloe shrugged. She's too busy faking her rebirth arc. She'll find out, Henry said. I'm counting on it. Chloe smirked, then turned to leave. By the way, Señor Whiskers dropped a USB into my backpack this morning. He's either a genius or the devil. And then she was gone. Back downstairs, Veronica sipped her wine slowly. She turned to Jessica. Do you believe in fate? Jessica raised an eyebrow. I believe in backup drives. Suddenly a ping. Chloe had uploaded a TikTok. Title: My Father's Other Life, Episode 1. Thumbnail: a blurred photo of Henry. And a cake. With the word Oliver. The comment section exploded, and upstairs, in a small, dim bedroom in another city, a boy in a hoodie watched the video with wide eyes. He whispered, "Finally." Henry Montgomery wasn't used to being seen. That's what made the exposure feel like fire beneath his skin. The study door remained closed. 4 hours. Henry hadn't moved. Not even when the sun began to bleed through the blinds like a slow confession. Downstairs, the house buzzed. Not with conversation, but with electricity. Tick-tock alerts, silent glances, the heavy breath of secrets stretching their legs. Veronica paced the kitchen in heels that echoed like accusations. Her phone buzzed every 3 seconds with messages that read, "Did you know? Is Oliver yours? Is this performance art or just a La Cruz being the La Cruz?" She threw the phone onto a velvet chair and gripped the countertop like it was a stage she might faint on. Lucretia entered, holding a delicate glass of what looked like tea but smelled suspiciously herbal. "Crisis tastes better when it's served hot," she said, sipping. "You knew." Veronica snapped. Lucretia's smile was almost kind. "Darling, I always know. I just choose when to care." Upstairs, Chloe lay on her bed, scrolling through the video's comments. Half were scandalized. The other half begged for more. She started writing the script for episode 2. Suddenly a knock. It wasn't on her door. It was from inside her closet. Cautiously, she opened it. Señor Whiskers stared up at her. In his mouth, a lace glove. Not hers. Tied to it, a tiny brass key. She took both. "You dramatic little demon." Meanwhile, in the guest room, Brandon sat shirtless, again in front of a ring light, practicing an apology video. "Hey guys, just wanted to address the whole surprise sibling scandal. I love my fans. Love wins. But sometimes love also lies. And that's growth?" Santiago hadn't answered his calls. The comments were already calling them forbidden fitness. Veronica appeared behind him. "Brandon." He jumped. "Mom. Jesus, you can't just float in like that. We need to talk about your genetic preferences." He turned red. "I didn't know. And we never. I mean, maybe just that one night after the protein gala, but..." "Enough," she said sharply, then softened. "I'm not angry. I'm just nostalgic. This all reminds me of the early seasons of my life." Brandon blinked. "Is that a metaphor?" She sighed. "It's trauma, darling. Trauma wrapped in red lipstick and unresolved plotlines." In the corner of the room, the TV autoplayed Chloe's next video. A teaser. Static. Then Henry, blurry but unmistakable. A voiceover. "He built a second life. And he left the door unlocked." Henry stared at the same video in his study, unmoving. He picked up his notebook. Wrote 2 words. "Call Oliver." Oliver didn't answer the call. But he didn't have to. He was already en route. The bus from Fair Hollow to Miramar was half empty, half broken, and entirely too slow for someone carrying that many questions in his hoodie pocket. He had packed light, earbuds, 1 hoodie, 3 granola bars, and a note his mother never meant for him to find. "He doesn't know I kept you. And I intend to keep it that way." Too late. Back at the Montgomery to La Cruz villa, chaos had mutated into routine. Jessica adjusted the curtains in the living room, letting in just enough sunlight to make the tension feel warmer. "So, nobody's talking today? Or are we just skipping straight to emotional Cold War mode?" Lucretia, perched on the couch like a mafia widow, flipped through her handwritten memoirs. "I'm writing the chapter titled Inheritance Roulette. You're all starring. Some of you don't survive the edits." Veronica, now in a flowing blush silk robe with unnecessarily dramatic sleeves, sipped sparkling water, and looked out the window. If one more person tags me in a reaction video, I swear I'll sue the entire app. Brandon stormed in, phone in hand. Okay. I've been canceled. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Again? For incest vibes. They're saying the video looked like the trailer for Game of Pecs. Catchy. Lucretia noted without looking up. Veronica flinched. I gave birth to a scandal magnet with abs. God is ironic. Suddenly, Chloe walked in, calm, composed, and holding the brass key Señor Whiskers had gifted her. She laid it gently on the coffee table. Everyone looked. What's that supposed to open? Brendan asked. A question. Chloe replied. Veronica narrowed her eyes. Is that from my room? No. It's from the past. They didn't get a chance to press further, because at that moment, the doorbell rang. Once. Then again. Veronica moved slowly toward the door, heels clinking on marble like countdowns. She opened it. There on the threshold stood a boy in a hoodie, travel bag over one shoulder, and the de la Cruz bone structure haunting his jawline. Hi, Oliver said. I think I'm in the right place. Behind her, Henry appeared at the top of the stairs. His hand gripped the railing. His face unreadable. Veronica stared at the boy, then back at Henry, then at the boy again. Lucretia, without even looking up, murmured, Well, there goes brunch. No one invited Oliver to stay, but no one told him to leave either. And that, in this family, was as close as it got to acceptance. He dropped his duffel in the hallway like a quiet declaration of war. Señor Whiskers sniffed it once, hissed, and disappeared under the piano, where he usually went to judge in peace. Henry descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing with decades of denial. You groan, he said stiffly. Oliver shrugged. That tends to happen when no one's looking. Veronica stood frozen, her eyes darting between them like a director trying to salvage a scene that had gone off script. Would you like something to drink? She offered, voice trembling with hospitality and horror. We have pomegranate juice. Or betrayal, if that's your taste. Chloe leaned against the wall, filming none of it, but capturing all of it with her eyes. Should I live stream this reunion? Or would that be exploitation in art? Jessica appeared with a tray, already loaded with glasses. I anticipated awkward hydration. Oliver sat on the edge of the ottoman, posture relaxed, gaze calculating. So, who knew about me? Veronica looked down. Henry didn't blink. Lucretia, sipping from her latest cup of mystery tea, offered a lazy wave. I suspected. You have that same tragic forehead wrinkle. Brandon raised a hand half-heartedly. Wait, so does that make you my? Technically? Chloe interjected. Your half-brother. Genetically. But emotionally? That's still under review. Oliver smirked. Don't worry. I'm not here to blow up your life. Not yet. Brandon sighed in relief. Though I did bring something, Oliver added. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked old and burned around the edges. He handed it to Henry. Henry unfolded it. His face shifted for the first time in hours. It was a copy of a birth certificate, but the signature wasn't his. Veronica leaned over. That's not your handwriting. No, Henry murmured. It's Lorenzo's. The room tilted. Lucretia put down her tea. Well, now I'm awake. Chloe crossed her arms. So you're telling me the mystery child of this entire melodrama might not even be Dad's? Oliver raised an eyebrow. Plot twist. Veronica dropped into a velvet chair, one manicured hand to her chest. Lorenzo. My Lorenzo. The one with the scars. The one who used to write poetry on my mirror in lipstick. Jessica tilted her head. Wasn't he also the one who slept with Chloe's yoga instructor? No, Chloe said. That was Diego. Or maybe Esteban. Hard to keep track. Henry walked to the bar cart and poured himself a scotch. No DNA test. Not yet, he muttered. Veronica's eyes lit up. Then we have suspense. Oliver stood up. Calm. Confident. Like a storm that already chose its target. I didn't come here for family, he said. I came for answers. And as he turned to walk up the stairs, like he'd always lived here, Señor Whiskers darted past him, key still tied to his tail. Straight into Veronica's bedroom. Secrets don't sleep in this house. They wait behind velvet curtains and scented candles, biding their time like lovers denied. Veronica followed Señor Whiskers into her bedroom, heels soft on the carpet, but eyes sharp as ever. The cat sat atop her vanity, tail flicking, the brass key still delicately tied to it like a final touch to a cursed gift. She untied it slowly, reverently, as if afraid the key might bite. The vanity drawer hadn't been opened in years, not since she swore to leave Lorenzo in the past, along with silk gloves, love letters, and that one scandalous audition tape she hoped the internet never found. The key clicked. Inside, dust, perfume samples from a century ago, and a jewelry box wrapped in red velvet ribbon. Veronica hesitated, then opened it. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a letter, addressed in Lorenzo's handwriting. To the one who never wanted to know the truth. Her breath caught. Behind her, the door creaked. Lucretia stood there. No knock, no permission, just presence. You kept it, she said simply. You knew? Veronica whispered. I told you to burn it. Veronica held the letter to her chest. And miss my third act? Never. Downstairs, Brandon attempted to bond with Oliver by offering him a protein shake. So, you play any sports? Lift? Maybe do, like angry cardio? Oliver stared at the blender suspiciously. I saute mushrooms and read Russian novels. Cool, cool, Brandon nodded. We'll start small. Jessica, wiping down the counter, leaned in. He's more Montgomery than de la Cruz. Still waters. Murderous depth. Oliver glanced at her. You know about Lorenzo? I know everything, she said, without smiling. I'm the furniture in this house. I've absorbed it all. He pulled out another photo, this one of Lorenzo holding a baby. No date. No notes. Just longing trapped in glossy finish. Was he a good man? Oliver asked. Jessica paused. He wore too much cologne. He lied beautifully. He once kissed Lucretia's hand at a funeral, and she didn't slap him. That's all you need to know. Back upstairs, Veronica sat on the edge of her bed, the letter now open. The words burned. You said you didn't want a child to ruin your career. So I disappeared. But now I wonder if you ever loved anyone more than the applause. She exhaled sharply, tears gathering but not falling. Lucretia handed her a glass of water. Not wine. Not tea. Just water. You can cry later, she said. Right now, you need to decide if you're going to tell the truth before someone else does. Veronica looked up. Or before he finds that script I hid in the floorboards. Lucretia blinked. You what? But Veronica was already on her feet, throwing open the closet. Behind the rows of dramatic gowns and expired dreams, there was a loose floor tile. And under it, a manuscript. The Forgotten Son, a tragedy in 5 acts. She stared at it and smiled. This isn't a scandal, she whispered. It's a comeback. For Veronica, pain was just the prelude to publicity. And this time, the ratings would be delicious. She placed the manuscript on her bed like a crown jewel. The cover was faded, edges curled like secrets that had waited too long. Her name was scrawled across the bottom in silver ink. Veronica de la Cruz, a true story. Eventually, downstairs, Oliver wandered the halls, like someone measuring the value of each painting, each silence. He paused at the family portrait in the hallway, the only one where Henry looked almost human. Chloe appeared beside him, barefoot and holding a half-melted candle. "You don't look like him," she said, squinting. "I get that a lot." She tilted her head. "You look more like someone who knows how to cause problems without raising their voice." "Montgomery blood," he said. "No, that's de la Cruz venom." Back in the kitchen, Brandon stood in front of the fridge, defeated. "There's nothing left that isn't sparkling, expired, or wrapped in passive aggression." Jessica handed him a plate. "Here. I made something real." He took a bite, paused. "Is this comforting? Am I being emotionally fed?" She winked. "First time for everything, Carino." Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Again. Chloe glanced up. "If it's another secret sibling, I swear I'm starting a group chat." Henry opened the door. And there, in all his scarf-wrapped glory, stood Lorenzo de Luca. Bald, bronzed, and holding a bottle of Tuscan wine with the label slightly peeling. "Darling," he purred, "I heard our tragedy went viral." Henry didn't speak. He just stepped aside. Veronica floated down the stairs like a woman arriving at her own funeral, glamorous and dangerous. She froze mid-step. "You?" Lorenzo bowed. "Me." The ghost of director's past. Lucretia, from the lounge chair, chuckled softly. "Well, I suppose we're doing that plotline now." Veronica descended, locking eyes with Lorenzo like they were fencing with glances. "You vanished. I respected your wishes. You respected nothing," she snapped. "You stole a role, a decade, and possibly a child." Oliver stood just out of reach, observing. Lorenzo turned to him, studied him, blinked slowly. "My God," he murmured. "He has my mother's jaw." Veronica threw her hands in the air. "Of course he has someone's jaw. That's how faces work." Chloe pulled out her phone. "I'm live streaming this under the tag #DaddyDrama." Brandon looked around. "Should I take my shirt off, or is this not that kind of moment?" Jessica whispered to him, "Maybe wait until someone faints." But no one fainted. Veronica walked up to Lorenzo, close enough to feel the ghost of old nights between them. "I should hate you." "You do." "I should slap you." "You might." Instead, she placed the manuscript in his hand. "Help me direct it," she said. "Let's turn this scandal into art." Oliver's voice cut through the moment like a scalpel. "Will I be in it?" Veronica turned to him. "You already are." In the de la Cruz house, turning trauma into theater wasn't just survival. It was tradition. Lorenzo sat at the dining room table surrounded by scattered script pages, wine-stained Post-its, and a single flickering candle, because Veronica insisted. Creativity needs shadows. Chloe leaned against the archway, arms crossed, eyeing the chaos like a disappointed art curator. "So this is really happening," she said. "Of course it is," Veronica replied from the chaise lounge, wrapped in a crimson robe she hadn't worn since Kim rejected her short film lips like velvet. Henry watched silently from the doorway, arms folded. He hadn't said much since Lorenzo arrived. But his silence had taken on a new shape, not apathy, but calculation. Oliver entered, holding an envelope. "I got a message," he said. Everyone paused. "It was left on my door. No name. Just this." He opened the envelope slowly. Inside, a photo. Black and white. Grainy. Of Lorenzo, sitting in a hospital room, holding a baby. But next to him, A woman who wasn't Veronica. Veronica stood. Who is that? Lorenzo didn't speak. His eyes flicked toward the window. Chloe stepped forward. Did you have another child? No, he said too quickly. Brandon squinted. Wait, is that my old nanny? Lucretia snatched the photo from Oliver's hand and peered over her glasses. Well, I'll be damned. That's Flavia. She disappeared after the villa fire in '07. Veronica gasped. You told me she went back to Lisbon. I told you what you needed to hear while you were filming that toothpaste commercial. Lucretia replied flatly. The room tightened like a breath held too long. Jessica broke the silence. So, just to clarify, we now have a second possible mother, a maybe baby, and a director who still owes me for breaking my French press in 2009. Lorenzo finally spoke, voice low. It was complicated. Veronica laughed. Darling, this family doesn't do simple. We do melodrama marinated in red wine and served with passive-aggressive garnish. Oliver sat down. So what now? You rewrite me again? Veronica stepped forward, softer now. No. We write you in. Fully. No filters. No more hiding. She turned to Chloe. You wanted a docu-series? We'll give them an opera. Henry finally walked in. If you do this, he said, voice like ice cracking under weight, you expose us all. Veronica smiled. Finally, something worth exposing. Lorenzo raised his glass. To truth, betrayal, and box office. Señor Whiskers leapt onto the table, knocking over the ink bottle and sitting proudly in the mess like a living exclamation point. Brandon blinked. Does this mean we're a cast now? Jessica handed him a mop. You've always been. The only difference is now the camera's rolling. And outside, parked just beyond the gate, a sleek black car idled quietly. Inside, a woman in sunglasses. Watching. Waiting. Finales aren't endings in this family. They're just dress rehearsals for the next disaster. The villa was transformed. Camera lights buzzed faintly against velvet curtains. Microphones dangled above floral arrangements never meant for set design. Veronica stood center stage, her living room, dressed in ivory satin, hair sculpted to look like she hadn't cried in 3 days, though she had twice for effect. Lorenzo adjusted the lighting. We shoot the confrontation first. Heightens tension. Sells the tragedy. Veronica pouted. Darling, I sell the tragedy. Outside, paparazzi began to gather, tipped off by a mysterious anonymous email. Chloe, in a corset made entirely of caution tape, live-blogged it all. Oliver sat in the corner, headphones on, reviewing his scene. The one where he confronts Henry. Except, the script was missing a page. He stood, walked toward Henry, who sat in the study once again, fingers steepled, eyes half-lidded like a man pretending he wasn't the reason the room smelled like unresolved issues. We need to talk, Oliver said. Henry didn't look up. We always do. I found the DNA test results. Oliver continued. They were in your desk. With the receipts. And the photo of Flavia. A long pause. She's not my mother, Oliver said. Finally, Henry raised his gaze. No, he said. She was a decoy. Then who? Someone who never wanted to be found, Henry said. And someone who just walked back into town. Outside, the black car door opened. A woman stepped out. Tall. Sleek. Dressed in all white, like irony on legs. She entered the villa through the back, unnoticed, until Señor Whiskers leapt from the bookshelf and hissed, the sound slicing through the tension like a violin string snapping. Everyone turned. Veronica gasped. Naughty? Natalia Solano. Henry's other wife. The one from upstairs. the pastel princess with claws sharper than gossip. She smiled sweetly. I brought dessert. Lorenzo dropped his light meter. Brandon choked on his protein bar. Jessica whispered, she's earlier than scheduled. Chloe grinned. Now this is content. Naughty handed Veronica a Tupperware box. I figured we'd need something sugary before everything goes bitter. Henry finally stood. You shouldn't be here. Oh, I'm always here, Carino. Naughty purred. You just forget which floor. She turned to Oliver, eyes scanning him like a resume. So, you're the twist. Oliver stared back. And you're the finale. Veronica stepped forward, arms crossed. What do you want? Naughty's smile widened. Nothing, darling. I already have what I wanted. She held up a marriage certificate. Signed. Recent. Henry's name bold and legal. Veronica froze. Lucretia entered just in time to see the paper and exhale. Well, she muttered. Looks like season 2 writes itself. And then, just as the cameras started to roll, Señor Whiskers jumped onto the table and pawed at a single photo frame, knocking it over. Inside the frame, a picture of Veronica, Henry, and a very pregnant woman in the background. Not Flavia. Not Naughty. Someone else. Unlabeled. Unknown. But smiling, just enough to disturb the symmetry. And somewhere off screen, another key clicked into place.